So this was the story that the Rolling Stone went with. It says gunshot victims left waiting as horse dewormer overdoses overwhelm Oklahoma hospitals, doctors say. Now, you see what that is, that they get to dunk on a red state and Trump voters and Ivermectin, which is now a generic drug, so nobody can make money off it. Anybody can manufacture it. Can't make money off it, right? And I just want to let you know that story was complete bogus. That was an untrue story, 100%. There were no gunshot victims left waiting, and there were nobody in their ICUs that had taken horse dewormer overdoses. Both of those things were completely made up. And how do I know it? Because, well, somebody reached out to the hospital, and this is from the hospital, message from the administration of Northeastern Health System, Sequoia. So there was an interview by a guy named Dr. Jason McLeod, and he's the one who asserted all this stuff, and then it just got repeated and repeated, and nobody fact-checked it. So although this is from the hospital, although Dr. Jason McLeod is not an employee of NHS Sequoia, he is affiliated with the medical staffing group that provides coverage for our emergency room. With that said, Dr. McLeod has not worked at our Salsa location in over 2 months. NHS Sequoia has not treated any patient due to complications related to taking ivermectin. This includes not treating any patients for ivermectin overdose. Nobody was even, not one person. All patients who have visited our emergency room have received medical attention as appropriate. Our hospital has not had to turn away any patients seeking emergency care. Rolling Stone then had to not retract the article, but they just took that statement from the hospital and they pasted it onto the top of their article, which they knew was 100% false. So they didn't retract the article. They left it up for clicks and to make advertising revenue. But all they did was they put that thing on the top of it and left up a completely false story that they knew was false. And Glenn Greenwald says the only reason Rolling Stone is calling this an update as opposed to what it so plainly is, a retraction, is because liberal outlets know that their readers don't care at all if they publish fake news as long as it's done with the right political motives and goals. Meaning, well, what I said, this is exactly like Russiagate, in that journalists are allowed to make stuff up out of whole cloth, be wildly unethical, and flat out lie to their audiences as long as your lies push establishment narratives and you are dunking on a red state or Trump. That's exactly what this is. That's exactly what happened there. And so, again, if you're going to lie, like Cenk Uygur when he lied and said McCarthy could become speaker around forced to vote, which was a blatant lie, like he never had to pay a price for that. Nobody did a video about it except us. Nobody called him out for it. Nobody's going to hold his feet to the fire. When he goes on the Hill, they're never going to ask him about it. Never. Why? Because he was lying at the behest of the establishment. Just like when he smeared Julian Assange and lied and said that Paul Manafort visited Julian Assange in jail in England. He didn't. I mean, at the Ecuador embassy. He never did. That was a complete lie. Cenk Uygur lied, repeated that story, then said Julian Assange was not reliable and not trustworthy. And he never had to pay a price for that. Why? Because he's never going to go somewhere where they're going to ask him that question. And he's lying at the behest of the establishment. And so that's what this is. They are lying that the establishment wants you to think ivermectin is a horse dewormer instead of what it actually is. One of the most widely prescribed drugs in human history, which is what it is. And it's on the WHO list of essential medicines. These are all facts that I'm going to show you. And that shows you the overwhelming amount of propaganda that the establishment has been throwing around COVID-19. So I'll give you, here's do you want to say anything, Nick, about this before I get into this?
Yeah. When you see the media lying about stuff like this, when you see them getting things so wrong and having no fact checkers at all, you have Rachel Maddow that was reporting this. She tweeted this out. She didn't even delete the tweet. This is why people distrust our institutions. And this is why I don't punch down. I don't blame anyone for not following the right protocols the way they're supposed to be doing, because I blame the system itself for making people distrust for media institutions and the institution themselves. And that's what Rolling Stone is doing here. That's what you see with the media, that they try and create this culture war dynamic around COVID-19, where people are pointing the fingers at their neighbors, blaming someone for taking ivermectin, instead of the establishment itself themselves for not actually taking care of the pandemic the way they should. So they are designing everyone to punch down instead of actually looking at the structural problems of the country. So that's all that, Jimmy, back to you.
And I just want to, again, I have to say this because we're on Google, YouTube, that this is just for information purposes. Anyway, we're not recommending anybody. We're not talking about what anybody should do as far as their medical care. I'm covering a story about misinformation that everybody recognizes now was 100% bogus story. And so that's what we're not giving out medical advice here at all at any point. What Nick and I are doing is covering the misinformation that is being pushed by the establishment media at the top of their lungs. Okay. So let's keep going. So this is a great thread. So Drew Holden did a thread. He said, we've got to talk about the Rolling Stone ivermectin article. It turns out the story about rural hospitals so flooded with overdoses that they couldn't treat other patients was made up, entirely invented. A lot of people took the bait, and I've got the screenshots. So here are all the screenshots Drew put together. The Business Insider, they reported it. No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. Isn't that hilarious that a guy's show is named No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, but he pushes the biggest lie of the year so far, and his show is called No Lie. That's funny. This is also MSNBC executive producer Lauren Peikoff. She tweeted this out. Patients are overdosing on ivermectin. She also, it's amazing. One phone call could have cleared it up. They could have called the hospital, but no one did because it confirmed their bias. So here's The Guardian. The Guardian also tweeted it out. Also did a story about it. Here's the Daily Mail. They also said it. There's a story by Mansour Shaheen. He didn't fact check it. He just wrote a bullshit story. Who wrote this one? Oh, we don't know. John Jackson, over at Newsweek. They do great work over at Newsweek. You should look for my article, The Dirtbag Left, Jimmy Dore, over at... So John Jackson also does a shittier job than a pothead comedian drunk in his own garage. So do you see how easy it is to do journalism in America? It's not hard. It's actually, you have to work hard to get it wrong, and they do. They do. New York Daily News, they also push this complete fake story. 100% fake story. The Hill, there it is. The Hill, that great institution, The Hill. They're also, they also pushed a complete bogus story. And here's Ian Higgins, one of the biggest shit libs of all time. Of course he pushed it. Of course this guy pushed it, and he's got a blue check. And of course he'll never lose that blue check for putting out medical misinformation and misinformation about COVID or about anything else. He'll never. Why? Because he's lying at the behest of the establishment and doing it at the top of his lungs. Glenn Greenwald caught Joy Reid. You want to hear Joy Reid? Here she goes.
So things are clearly bad, but they're being made even worse by people who have refused to take the vaccine and instead are swallowing horse paste. The emergency room in one rural Oklahoma town is being overwhelmed by people overdosing on ivermectin, the horse deworming medication. It's gotten so bad that gunshot victims are having to wait to be treated.
Hey, sure, one phone call to the hospital could have cleared this all up, but Joy-Ann Reid and her $1 million staff is not going to do that. Why try to get the facts on a story when you can push misinformation and propaganda at the behest of the establishment, which looks like a dunk on redneck America and Trump voters, isn't it? Why should we try to get it right? But in fairness to Joy-Ann Reid, maybe she got this story 100,000% wrong because Russian hackers time traveled into her production meeting and inserted this story. That's what I think. I think a time traveling Russian hacker is responsible for that. Here's Rachel Maddow tweeted it out. Tweets, is it still up? Could you check and see if this tweet is still up? Because it was when we put this together. So she tweeted this out September 2nd. And again, no price to pay. When you went to retweet this bogus article, Twitter didn't put a warning on, hey, this is a bullshit article. Hey, this is suspect. Hey, you sure? None of that. And of course, she didn't get taken off Twitter for spreading misinformation. Isn't that it? You'll get kicked off of Twitter for spreading true information. That's how bad they've gotten. But they won't kick off an establishment news person for spreading 100,000% misinformation.
I've seen people kicked off social media for simply reporting on police violence.
That's right.
I've seen situations. I've seen anti-war pages get taken down for quote-unquote misinformation that is later proven true. So it's always funny how the people that actually prop up the establishment is allowed to lie. And this is why it's actually really, really hard to be a leftist in this country, because being a leftist in this country is nonstop debunking corporate media lies, the lies that come from MSNBC, from CNN, from Fox News. If you're a corporate partisan, if you're a capitalist, it's actually very easy. All you gotta do is repeat the nonsense that comes from the corporate media. If you're a Democrat, you can just watch MSNBC, CNN, and get your talking points. And I see these same liberal heads. They just repeat the same thing they see on CNN. I watch it out of curiosity. I see what they're saying, and I go on Twitter, and of course you see the shit libs. They're saying the same exact thing that Rachel Maddow and their people are doing. The same thing coming for Fox News with Republicans. But as a leftist, we got to look past that and find a way to debunk this stuff. That's why I think it's super important to talk about this stuff, to reveal to people why the media lies to you, how they do it, and the fact that they didn't have anyone that can do a basic fact check. That says everything you know about the media, because I'm starting out now in the media game, and everything I report on Fred Hampton Leftist, I really focus and make sure I have it right. And if I don't have something right, that's a blow to my credibility. I mean, people wouldn't let me live it down. But every single day, over and over and over again, we have the establishment media figures that just blatantly lie to people, and then people still take them seriously as an institution. This is why we need a giant counter, so we can counter these lies, because people watch this stuff and they just repeat it over and over again.
This is Rachel Maddow, by the way, Nick. This is Rachel Maddow. And she could have tweeted out, hey, imagine if Russia just made all the ambulances go poof. Because that's how she reported some completely made up story on her show last winter during the big cold snap. She said, what if Russia just made your heat go poof?
They want us to be afraid of Russia, but I'm not. Like, Russia is not responsible for 1/4 of the world's present population. Russia is not the country that is shooting and killing black people with impunity. Old school liberal playbook, and Rachel Maddow has made millions doing this.
That's right.
Rachel Maddow, she makes more in one episode than I did in my entire year back when I was in retail. So they are paid by the establishment to say whatever the establishment want. And she loyal. All these people are very class loyal. They all play the divide and conquer game, and that's representative of their coverage of COVID-19. Because if you listen to us at Friend and Leftists, we rather punch them. We rather explain the real problem that's going on. And there was a study that came out that showed that 1/3 of the COVID-19 deaths would have been prevented if we had a universal healthcare program.
That's right.
But you notice that these people never bring that up.
Never.
They want to punch down. And they want to make this a partisan game where they're pretending, oh, you have Trump supporters and you have people that take ivermectin. That is the problem. No, the problem is capitalism, because capitalism is not designed to handle a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And they don't want you to have that conversation. They want you to blame your neighbor. They want you to blame, the vaccine is going to be the one to stop COVID-19, even though that never made sense on face value. And you had the same people like Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. They was very skeptical of the vaccines at first and saying the same thing. But it's all politics with these people. They're not actually talking about the real solutions. The solution of actually having a progressive economy where people don't lose their jobs, don't lose their homes because you guys instituted lockdowns without any sort of social safety net to protect people. Like, this kind of stuff is the fault of the ruling class. We are in the position we are in right now because of the ruling class, not your neighbor who took ivermectin. That's what we want to highlight.
200,000 people died from COVID-19 because we don't have Medicare for all. You think Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper would mention that to Joe Biden or Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or anybody in the Democratic Party? They never mention it. They never bring it up. I don't even know if they even reported that story. I bet they didn't. 200,000 people would be alive today. Now, I thought Trump was supposed to be the guy who didn't care how many people died. Joe Biden is not giving us health care, and that's 200,000 people dead who would still be alive if we had Medicare for all, which Joe Biden has promised to veto if it ever gets to his desk, and no one in the Democratic Party is even talking about anymore. No one, they wouldn't bring it. Let me just show you this. Zaid Jilani, he tweeted this out. He said, I talked to Sequoia County Sheriff, where the ivermectin story began. He described the ivermectin story as ridiculous and gave me the statistics on gunshot victims this year. Here's what he said. He said he said, I managed to touch base. Here it is. Yes, I heard. This is what the sheriff said. Yes, I heard that ridiculous story as well. He told me about the ivermectin pieces. Other than one shooting victim that died, there has only been one other gunshot victim in our county so far this entire year. He was treated at our hospital and released. There was no wait time at all. So that's pretty awesome. Drew goes on, he says, it should go without saying, but inventing a narrative out of thin air simply because it confirms your priors is not going to help rebuild trust in the media. It would have taken a single phone call to shoot this story down. Why didn't that happen? Because it'll make you a lot more money if you push a lie at the behest of the establishment. That's exactly why Rachel Maddow makes $30,000 a day. A day. That's what Rachel Maddow makes a day, and she couldn't bother to pick up the phone or have somebody who works for her pick up the phone and call the hospital or the sheriff or anybody. At the same time, and the same people who purport to be concerned about misinformation and how it spreads on platforms like Twitter will surely be silent on this. Of course they are. Where's the gnashing of teeth from disinformation reporters? Where are the Twitter content warnings? Where's the outrage? You won't hear any, because this is the acceptable type of political lie, and none of these people or outlets will learn anything. They'll keep doing this because they care more about scoring cheap dunks on their opponents than getting the truth. Here's the New Republic. They say, how is the media still screwing up COVID stories? On a dubiously sourced account that confirmed many liberals' assumptions about rural Americans taking horse medicine was just too good to fact check. Glenn Greenwald tweeted this out. He said, so many of the pseudo-edgy soft left accounts fell for the rural morons getting sick with ivermectin hoax because they're all just basically Rachel Maddow, who curse a bit more and occasionally say mean things about Chuck Schumer on their way to voting Democratic. Yeah.
There's so many people that they have hashtag communist, hashtag socialist in their handle. I see these people all the time. They always pretend they leftier than thou, but then at the end of the day, they vote for Democrats every 2 years like a good little boy. And as you covered, the media is using this as a way to attack their political opponents. Because they had to find a way to distract from the real incompetence that's going on, the incompetence of the ruling class that is responsible for this pandemic. And I am still laughing. I'm still laughing at all the people that thought if they vote for a neoliberal capitalist, that they're somehow going to handle the pandemic better. And I was warning people. I'm like, yo, a Democrat is not going to handle this pandemic any better than Trump did. And now we got the numbers that are pulling out right now. Biden is completely failing on this pandemic. They're not even trying anymore. That's why they want to push these stories out. They want people to believe that the reason with the pandemic is the right-wing Trump supporters, and that's why they're pinning everything on the political enemies instead of the people that are actually responsible for this. That's exactly what's going on in the corporate media. That's why they're not even fact-checking the story.
Well, here's Glenn. Glenn Greenwald has the final word here. He says, media liberals are herd animals whose primary skill is grazing together so tightly that it convinces them they're all really smart, when in fact, they're just well-behaved herd animals. And I learned that covering Donald Trump and Russiagate and Syria and the gas attacks. I learned that that is 100,000% true. And now COVID-19 and ivermectin is proving to be the exact same thing. Wait till you see the next story I do about a guy from The Intercept, again, pushing unbelievable misinformation, anti-science information to get a dunk on his political opponents. Well, for instance, did you know the WHO, World Health Organization, has a list of essential medicines. Guess what medicine is on their list of essential medicines? Essential. Ivermectin. There it is. World Health Organization's list of essential medicines. There it is. Ivermectin. Not a horse dewormer. The ivermectin for human beings. One of the most widely prescribed drugs in human history. Almost 4 billion prescriptions. In fact, this is from the NIH, National Institute of Health. They have COVID-19 treatment guidelines. They have guidelines for how to treat COVID-19 at the NIH. Again, this isn't at Donald Trump's house. This isn't at Fox News. This is at the NIH. But people will pretend it's from Fox News or Donald Trump, even though it's from the NIH. So this is their recommendation. They say there is insufficient evidence for COVID-19 treatment guidelines panel to recommend either for or against the use of ivermectin for the treatment of COVID-19. Results from adequately powered, well-designed, and well-conducted clinical trials are now needed to provide more specific evidence-based guidelines on the role of ivermectin in the treatment of COVID-19. And why do they say this? What's their rationale? Their rationale is right here. I'm going to read it to you. The rationale for this is ivermectin has been shown to inhibit the replication of SARS-CoV-2 in cell cultures. That's why they're recommending doctors give ivermectin to people in studies in control from adequately powered, well-designed, and well-conducted clinical trials. That's what they're telling doctors to do. We need to get more data on this. Now, why haven't... Now, I'm pretty sure this was from February of this year that they released this and said, let's do some trials. But they have to be because all the data they have now are called epidemiological, meaning they haven't done the kind of trials you need to do that rule out every other thing, right? And in order to do that kind of trial, that kind of study, you need a huge organization that is adequately powered to do it. And the only organizations that are adequately powered to do that kind of study is the government and big pharma, and they just haven't gotten around to it. So that's kind of interesting. Although I am in a study right now being conducted by my doctor, who's leading a group of doctors in studying how to treat people who have COVID already and people who got injured. And I present as a long hauler, a COVID long hauler. I present that way. And so they can treat me even though I never had COVID. So they're figuring out protocol to treat people who are COVID long haulers who never get better from it, and people like me. And I'm going to have him on the show Monday. So Monday I'm going to have that doctor who's leading and he's going to talk about the studies he's done and how to treat people who are already sick with COVID and people who got sick like me. Zaid Jelani tweeted out, why is basically the entire media lying about what ivermectin is and calling it a horse drug. Well, there's lots of theories why. Herd mentality is one of them. Another one is to dunk on their political opponents. Another one is the media is entirely funded by the big pharma. And there's only 6 media companies to get a job in left in America. So, of course, they're going to do the propaganda of the big pharma. That's you don't have to be a Columbo to figure that. I don't have to be an investigative journalist to figure that out. Right? Okay? I'm a drunk pothead comedian. I figured it out. Okay. So he says owning people they dislike seems more important than the truth. And that is true. And why am I? So here, this is also from the NIH. And they talk about the drug ivermectin, which was discovered in the late 1970s. And this is from the NIH, says it has had immeasurably beneficial impact in improving the lives and welfare of billions of people throughout the world. Ivermectin has had a measurably beneficial impact in improving the lives and welfare of billions of people throughout the world. So when you see all those idiots on Twitter or on MSNBC or CNN or at Rolling Stone, you know that they don't know anything about what they're talking about. And if they do, they're straight up liars. And that's what most of them are. Most of them are straight up liars that know better. Rachel Maddow knows better. She wants to push propaganda anyway. Rachel Maddow knew better about Russiagate. She wanted to push it anyway. Why? Because it gets her clicks, ratings, and it gets her $30,000 a day. Here's the guy who invented ivermectin. 2 people, William C. Campbell and Satoshi Omura. They're the ones who invented it, and guess what they got? They got the Nobel Prize for it in 2015. In 2015, they got the Nobel Prize in physiology or medicine for ivermectin. 2015. Not 1920. 2015. This is from the Irish Farmers Journal. So an Irish Farmers Journal knows that ivermectin is not only used for horses, because they say the compound ivermectin was developed into effective treatments against parasitic diseases that affect humans, particularly among the world's poorest populations. It radically lowered the incidence of river blindness and lymphatic filariasis, as well as showing efficacy against an expanding number of other parasitic diseases. That's from a farmer's journal. They know what ivermectin is, but they just don't know it in the mainstream media in the United States. The entirety of the mainstream media doesn't know what a farmer's journal knows and what a pothead comedian knows. Isn't that amazing? Or do they actually know it and they're paid to lie to you? I guess you get to decide. By the way, here's Matt Taibbi has written about this. He wrote an article called Ivermectin. Can a drug be right-wing? A potential COVID-19 treatment has become hostage to a larger global fight between populists and anti-populists. That's what's happened. For fuck's sake, can a drug be right-wing? No, it can't. Just for the record, my ibuprofen has been voting green for years. Okay. Here's another article he wrote. Why has ivermectin become a dirty word? At the worst moment, internet censorship has driven scientific debate itself underground. That's the reach of big pharma and their money. They've got unlimited money, so they can they get them to censor. By the way, this is Tokyo's Medical Association chairman. The chairman of the Tokyo Medical Association held a live press conference and recommended ivermectin to all doctors for all COVID patients. Japan's government is one of the most conservative and cautious in the world. Data is clear, huge news. So that's him saying it. That's the head of the Japanese Medical Association. That's not me, and I'm not recommending anything to anybody. I'm reporting what someone else is saying. So that's called doing real journalism. I'm just reporting. I'm not endorsing. I'm not unendorsing. Just like the CDC. I'm just reporting what happened. This happened. You want to hear?
アフリカでですね、イベルメクチンをそういう
So what he
年に
did was in Africa, he compared so they're saying there's data that's, again, not concrete. He's saying there's data from Africa. People aren't getting COVID-19 like they thought they were going to get. And he is theorizing it's because of ivermectin, and that's why he's recommending everybody. He is. I'm not. He is. Okay? And I have to keep saying this because we live in an era of censorship. I love, someone tweeted this out. I can't believe the non-horse drug has a horse on the label and says for oral use only in horses. So that's a guy named Eric McClung. He replied to Zaid Jilani trying to say that Zaid Jilani's not telling the truth about ivermectin being a human medicine. He, of course, not doing a Google search, ivermectin. It's on the WHO list of essential medicines. Eric didn't bother to do that. What he wanted to do was try to feel superior and get a dunk on somebody while he's being anti-science. He's being 100% anti-science and pro-propaganda. That's what that is. So that's what's called misinformation or a lie. So in order to dunk on someone and try to get likes, he got 4,259 likes on something that's 100% wrong. 100% wrong. Isn't that amazing? So I tweeted a tweet at him, and I said, so is penicillin a horse drug too? Because there's a horse version of it. There it is. There's the horse on the face of the bottle. There's a cow and a pig, and it says penicillin. There it is. There's the horse. There's the cow. There's the pig. Why don't you take 2 seconds and Google who is WHO essential medicines, ivermectin, or not, and then you can keep mindlessly repeating anti-science propaganda about ivermectin fed to you by the establishment. Suit yourself. By the way, people went on to keep trying to dunk on me over this incorrectly. People kept saying that somehow they're not seeing what I showed them. It's amazing. So it's like when I grew up, and I always thought right-wingers, fundamentalist Christians, were the ones who didn't accept facts because they didn't believe in evolution. They didn't believe in. Some of them were flat earthers. All that shit. I always thought, like, those people are nuts. Like, they don't understand fact. Well, same thing on the whoever is a Democratic voter. I don't call them the left. But if you vote for the Democrats, they're a right-wing party, according to AOC, and they are. So these are right-wingers voting Democrat who think they're dunking on people further right than them. And they're 100% wrong. I mean, that's kind of amazing. And by the way, here's aspirin from the vet. Is aspirin now for my cat? Here's penicillin for fish. So it's not for humans anymore? The Jimmy Dore Show is coming to a city near you August 28th. We're in Las Vegas at the Plaza, and we just added another show in Portland. We're there in Portland on September 10th and 11th. October 3rd, we're at Harlow's in Sacramento. More dates being added. Go to jimmydoorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets. See you at a live show.